Thomas Tuchel's the new coach of England. Who would have thunk that, huh? But now, that's not the issue. It's everything that's gone on, all the repercussions that it's had, all the issues that it's had, all of the backlash that it's had. It's crazy to hear that. I mean, we're in 2024, and I see a lot of, I've seen the Telegraph, I've seen the Sun, I've seen the Daily Mail do articles, opinion pieces, or hit pieces even, on if Thomas Tuchel knows the anthem, that only an English coach should coach England, all these things. And it's the ugly side of the English media. And it's a shame, because you do have a coach that's a winner. Now, in terms of his relationships, in terms of the long term of Thomas Tuchel, that's a different story, because you're dealing with someone that does tend to burn bridges very quickly. That's just the way he works, the way he functions, ends up rubbing people and being creating friction within an environment. Could that happen? Maybe, I don't know, but hopefully, for his sake, it doesn't happen. He'll have to prove a lot of things, and prove them even to a greater extent than an English manager. And people saying, well, the coach of England needs to be English, but yeah, many wanted Pep Guardiola, and that's been said over and over again. So I'm using a counter argument that is quite trite, but it's still very effective. At the end of the day, you get a coach that's won a Champions League, that's won league titles, that's been competitive, that was the only coach to take PSG to a Champions League final. That in and of itself ends up being amazing, as crazy as PSG happened to be. That you have a coach that ends up coming into a situation where he kind of takes it in stride, saying, oh, well, I'm sorry I have a German passport. And England ends up being a journey into the unknown, because it's unknown where they could end up possibly winning a World Cup, in the US ironically, or getting knocked out prematurely. Now, that would be a huge blow to him. There's no doubt about that. But English managers with England, why aren't there any English managers coaching? Because they're not good enough. They're not good. Maybe one. And you know what? I would have to agree with Alan Shearer in this one, because Eddie Howe would probably end up being the one that was the most logical when it comes to coaching the English national team. But he's at Newcastle, and Newcastle's not going to let him go. End of story. Who else? Well, Gary O'Neill could be a possibility in the future, near future. It was funny because I was watching, after the Colombia-Chile match, I was watching Chilean television. And it was funny because, when you kind of have that certain sense of resignation, one of the methods that you go and appeal to is humor, even satire, even kind of like, being very, very poignant and being very direct with that dart that you're throwing out there. There was a panel that was talking about this. And of course, Chile losing the way they lost historically against Colombia, and Tuchel getting signed as the English coach led to this one. So which English coach do we end up getting? Which was kind of, and one raised Sam Allardyce, since we're in last place. Maybe he can get us out of this one. That ends up being how it was being taken, the Chile loss. I mean, references to Sam Allardyce. Overall, that's how it worked out. And that's how things ended up with of course, do some in certain regions look at English coaches highly? Yeah, in the Caribbean, because they're bought into everything English is good. South America, not so much. They're not going to bring in an English coach. No way. Just no way. Might as well keep one of your own. Might as well bring in a Colombian coach. Might as well bring a Brazilian coach. Might as well bring an Argentine coach. In the Caribbean, it's a different story, because there's a fascination with English, everything that is English, for good or bad, obviously. But there is really no coach to take over England to take the step that they need to take. Gareth Southgate was only going to get them, and let's be completely honest, Gareth Southgate did what he could with what he had, with what he knew, or what he was able, with what he knew, and he was willing to risk. You know, it's that gambler that goes to the poker table, and all he does is bet one chip at a time. And hopefully, you know, he's got a good hand. Oh, I don't know, maybe somebody's got a better hand than I do. That was Gareth Southgate. I mean, and you look at his deck, and you're like, whoa, as far as what he had in terms of cards, you're like, damn, that's a pretty nice hand. But he wasn't willing to risk more. He was willing to put in that one chip, and that was it. Every single time, even in a final, even getting England to 2 finals, something unheard of in the past 60 years. So that, in of itself, ends up being the major thing that has been to the detriment of English football. Of course, the Bozeman Law, the globalization of football, the globalization of the Premier League, where you have all of these different influences coming in, everything going back to Arsene Wenger back in the 90s, to every single foreign coach that has come in and has been able to implement their little grain of salt. Pep Guardiola coming into City, everything that has occurred when even Jurgen Klopp bring in Gegenpress and everything else that he was able to, all of those foreign coaches, the foreign coaches that have been extremely successful in the Premier League, those are the ones that end up being the difference makers in terms of that, and to a certain extent also relegated the English coach, because the English coach really didn't have a lot of evolution in terms of coaching. There was really nothing that was being advanced in terms of English coaches and English coaching. Now, let's also keep it real. English coaches at the youth level have been extremely successful. Steve Cooper, Lee Carsley, amongst many others. Or Steve Cooper winning the Under-20 World Cup. They've been able to develop players at a very good rate, at a very high rate. And a lot of those players that were at the Under-17s and Under-20s over the past few years have been able to make the leap into the senior side. So, again, do they offer something? Yeah, but not where they need to do it, not where they need to be. And I think that's where we end up getting confused. Are they bad coaches? No, they're not. They're good coaches at certain levels, not at the level that England's demanding or England's striving to go for, which is up there with Spain, with France, with Argentina, etc., etc., etc. If you kind of catch my drift. So at the end of the day, when all of this comes to fruition, is Thomas Tuchel the man? That's still left to be seen. Because to be honest with you, there will be a lot of work that needs to be done. There will be a lot of things that he's going to have to do differently than everybody else. In England, I don't care, because I've had people tell me this. In England, English are measured one way, foreign players are measured differently. English coaches are measured one way, foreign coaches are measured completely different in terms of the measurement or the standard in which they are looked upon. Will he have to prove a lot more than an English coach? Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Because the media is going to ask much more of him. Or the media is going to be much pickier with him compared to an English coach. As crazy as it sounds. They'll try and nitpick anything in order to be able to kind of put holes in his arguments or put holes in his overall performance. That will be something that happens with Thomas Tuchel in England. A lot of it has to do with media, and of course, they get sensationalistic when a foreign coach comes in. Just ask Fabio Capello, just ask Sven-Göran Eriksson. It is the way it is. They don't get away with the amount that an English coach gets away with. Let's put it that way. So that'll be interesting to look at. It's going to be an interesting team to observe over the next 18 months. Especially because if you look at it from a group stage qualifying for the World Cup, England might get an easy group. Probably will get an easy group. But people won't be looking at it if they win. Oh, all right, fine. How they play? Because they're looking for more. because they got tired of a team that's so inhibited, that seemed like they were kind of shackled from a tactical standpoint. Let's see what Tuchel does differently with this side, because there's potential for a great deal of things. Now, how you implement that potential, that, my people, that, my friends, is where the key lies in terms of his success or not. We shall see. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any English coaches you think are better than Thomas Tuchel. Let me know if there's anyone that you could think is better than Thomas Tuchel. Even in the comments, okay? I want to hear about it. I want to hear from you. I want to know exactly how you feel about this issue. For me, I think it's a good hire, because that's all there was. And that's all there was that could take over ASAP. And when I mean ASAP, I mean from now until January. It is what it is. Ciao.